Welcome to Claris Talk AI. We have special guest Ian Jempson. Welcome, sir.
Hi, it's good to be here.
So I've met you a few
First time
times
I've
at
been
different
guest on this.
conferences, and you've got a much deeper background than most of us in the FileMaker community with AI, because you have several years before FileMaker, before we all knew it was a thing. You were working with it. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I guess I'll start off saying I've been working with FileMaker kind of forever. Um, and about 12 years ago, I kind of moved away from the FileMaker world and worked as a software architect in a large kind of marketing company where I basically looked at architecting sort of large large data flows from
Mm-hmm.
banks to public their communications. But as part of that, what I ended up doing was going back to school and doing an MBA. And while I was doing my MBA, I spent a lot of time looking at how AI fit into sort of the strategic landscape and how it was affecting business strategy. So that's what I wrote my dissertation on, and came up with a couple of business ideas around that. So when I was finished that, I left my job as a software architect to start transforming digital. Basically, spent a lot of time working on products around extracting un meaningful data from unstructured data. So
Mm-hmm.
particularly around meetings. Um, and then essentially what I found was that Teams and Zoom have implemented the product that I was building kind of as part of their core offering. And so I've kind of come back in the direction of FileMaker. So looking at how we can apply this stuff with FileMaker.
Yeah, and the community is very glad of that. I'm glad of it because I've learned a lot from taking apart your example files and looking through your slides and stuff like that. I'm definitely in the group of developers that has sort of been playing catch up, and I've just fallen in love with it, I think, through the last couple years. So, you're presenting at Engage coming up, right?
That's right. In towards the end of March,
Hmm.
Engage in Austin, in Texas. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'm going to be speaking again about semantic search. I've given a number of presentations on this already, but this is going to be informed a bit more by some of the conversations I've had with people who've tried to implement it in the real world and sort of what are some of the what are some of the things that they found difficult or tricky. There's some Claris has provided some really, really good training materials
Hmm.
on how to do it for the certification for
Hmm.
that. Um, and I was really pleasantly surprised by them. They're very, very good. So I recommend those to anyone. But I'm also going to be talking, like I say, about some of the issues that people have been having about, like, how do I apply this? Because people
Yeah,
are saying
yeah, yeah.
it sounds like a great feature, but like, where does it fit into my solution? How can I actually use this in the real world?
I want to take a little nerdy aside here, having done a
Okay.
little work on semantic search. Oh, after we talk about this, I want to go back to a session you just presented at Claris. But I've been working a lot with semantic search, but I mostly have been working with a couple of OpenAI models, like Text 3 Small. What other models
Mhm.
have you used, and what kind of results are you getting with them?
Um, okay. What I've been doing is I generally, when I start playing around with something,
Hmm.
I usually work with OpenAI just because their APIs are really straightforward. They're well documented. If you run into a trouble, there's loads of places to look for help.
Including
Um,
including ChatGPT.
Absolutely. Yeah, it understands those things very well.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
Perplexity dot is another one that use quite a bit for that type
Hmm.
of thing. Um, but I also run a number of models locally. So just trying to remember the name of them. There's a couple of different smaller embedding models
Hmm.
that I use. So I mostly run them in a product called Olama, which allows you to run large language models locally on your
Okay.
computer or your network, sort of
That's
under
like
your
LM
control.
Studio, different, easier, better.
Absolutely. It's a similar kind of thing.
Okay.
Same kind of I find it a little bit easier than LM Studio,
Okay.
um, but it's LM Studio provides a bit more of an interface and showing you what's going on, whereas Olama tends to run in the background and you can interface it with it via an API, and it provides an OpenAI compatible API.
Hmm, okay.
So the code you wrote for OpenAI just works. And
Oh,
that's the same
nice. Wow.
with LM Studio
Okay.
as well, that they're both have implemented OpenAI compatible APIs for embeddings. So the code you wrote for OpenAI will just work when you point it at
Yeah.
one of these,
And then you're
except
not
it's
paying
entirely
a
within your
price.
network.
Yeah. And what's the performance like?
For things like embeddings, it's pretty good. It, I mean, it depends on the computer you're running it on.
Hmm.
If you're running it on a Mac, say like if it's a Mac with an M1, M2, M3, or M4
Hmm. Hmm.
chip, you're going to get pretty good performance because those all have GPUs built in, and LM Studio and Olama are really good about taking advantage of the GPU
Hmm.
in your Mac. If you run it, say, inside Docker, a Docker container, which you can do on your Mac,
Hmm.
you'll find the performance isn't as good because Docker isn't able then to take advantage of the GPU. So you're running it entirely on CPU.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Kind of math that these things are doing, they're much, much faster on something with a GPU.
Yeah, and
So that,
I love AWS, and a lot of the AWS instances all of the instances I've been playing with are really only CPU heavy. So I'm
yeah,
sure they will have some GPU heavy or only ones, but I haven't played with
they
that
do.
yet.
They're expensive. They're when you look at how much is this costing me per hour? It's like, oh wow, that it mounts
Yeah,
up.
yeah, for sure. So you just presented at Claris offices in Europe, yeah?
In London. Yeah,
London? So
yeah.
not in Europe. I'm not sure if one of those
Well,
people who considers the UK to be Europe or not.
I still do. Yes. Let's not talk about that disaster
No, I'm
that
not. Yeah, I'm
happened.
not talking about that, but I mean, just some people think it's
Yeah.
an island. It's not
Um,
like part of the continent, but
Apple's European HQ is in Battersea in a converted power station that's been renovated. And if you remember the Pink Floyd album that's got like the power station with a pig flying over it,
yep.
that
Animals?
is Animal, I think so.
Yeah.
Anyway, that is Apple's European headquarters are in that power station, which has been converted to offices and extremely expensive residential buildings. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a fabulous location. Anyway, so that digressing a bit, sorry.
I wanted to
Um,
know. Yeah. And so
um,
Claris's headquarters is there too, in that.
Iris is there as well.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Um, so I presented on, and I was talking about building AI agents in FileMaker or integrating uh, FileMaker with AI agents. So that's a term you're hearing thrown around a lot right
Yep.
now, like AI agents. And to be totally honest, most of what people are talking about with agents are kind of, it's like rebranded workflows,
Mm-hmm.
except they're now incorporating AI in some way. So a lot of them will talk to an LLM. So the demo I gave a couple of demos. One was the Anthropic desktop app on my Macintosh, talking to FileMaker, and I can actually show that if
Yeah,
you
I'd
would
love
like to
that.
see.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
So
and then
there's
the
a
other,
so Anthropic has a desktop app kind of like the ChatGPT one, right? So you run it.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly the same kind of thing. Anthropic have built what they call MCP, which is Model Context Protocol,
Hmm.
and it's a framework that allows their systems to communicate with AI agents. So I think they're trying to get ahead of things by they basically said, well, we've built this framework, this software framework. If we get a lot of people using it, then our framework is going to be kind of the go-to choice, and people will use our
Yeah, yeah,
systems. So, but it doesn't only work with our systems. So if I can share my screen, if you bear with me 1 second,
sure.
I will try to share the right screen. I want desktop
My
two.
favorite feature in Zoom, by the way, is if you go to the advanced tab for sharing, you can share a portion of a screen. It'll draw like a box that you can resize and move around. And then any windows from any application that you move inside that little window are shared. It's great. Oh boy. So
Oh,
yeah, you can
yeah.
try to allow access here, and hopefully you won't have to quit and relaunch Zoom.
Uh, okay.
Yeah, I see a Zoom. I see the web page.
Can you see?
I'm not seeing FileMaker. I'm just seeing the Zoom web page that says accept cookies.
I think I've shared the
Wrong
wrong
monitor.
screen. I'm sorry about that.
I do that. I think at least once a week. I don't know.
We do it pretty regularly. Okay, so I want desktop
It's
two.
really hard with Teams because with Teams it shows you like all the windows and all your applications, and picking the right one is whew.
Actually,
Always
what they've
confusing.
done is I've noticed they've actually now just displayed numbers on the screens, which is handy. Okay,
Oh
now
yeah,
can
there
you
you go.
see?
Yep, now I'm looking at it in FileMaker. Tasks, Insight.
Okay. Yeah. So what I basically did was I took the so this is like the I just created a new FileMaker database. I took their standard tasks database, which is just the basic template that comes with the system. I added a few tasks. Got two. Well, there's only three, but it's enough to prove the point. So we've got two of them that are in progress and one that is pending. So if I just run this, I'm just showing the recording rather than showing this live because I've done enough demos to know that running them live never works. So I'm
I see.
opening the Claude application, which is very
Mhm.
similar to the ChatGPT app. Similar kind of thing. You can say, how can I help you today? And
Yep,
so I'm
choose
just going
choose
to
your
say,
model. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. What are my pending tasks? And you can see it's asking me, do I want to allow this tool to run? Because when you run the tools, it needs to get permission. And so it's
So,
basically telling me I've got
and
one
that did
pending
an
task.
API call to FileMaker server?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've written what I've done is I've written the server behind the scenes in Python. And so it basically the Python server is like in their framework
Hmm.
will speak to FileMaker. So
Okay.
what you can see is actually it's quite nice. It's basically said, what's in progress. It understands what I asked before. Um, tell me I've got two tasks in progress and I've got three active tasks. Um, so I thought that was pretty cool. It's just the beginning uh, of this. It's like a very simple kind of integration, but that could be extended to include running FileMaker scripts or any number of things.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. So like I mean, you sort of, well, this is one of the things, right? Is it deterministic? Do you have to determine in advance what it has access to? And I think with, to some
Yes.
degree, of course, we'll need to do that.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. It's very restricted in terms of what it can actually do in two ways. The the code behind the tool, which actually I don't have handy on this computer,
mhm.
um, is, is it only exposes certain functions to Claude. So Claude is only aware of those functions that I have exposed in the code.
Right.
And then as a second backstop thing, if I just back up the video here, find the right spot, you can see that when it went to call the tool, it again, the Claude app is asking for permission to allow use this tool. So, and
Yeah.
that's because obviously the computer security risk of letting these things run rampant on your computer,
Yeah, definitely.
God, what? Um,
Yeah,
I mean,
not
I
just
could
for
have written
FileMaker, but for whatever, right? Yeah.
absolutely. So this is something that really people need to be quite careful about. But you can see that the function was called get tasks and ask FileMaker was the name of the overall um, agent.
Would
And
this
I can
need a
specify,
Python app? Is there a way to configure it to just go directly to make an API call to FileMaker? I guess how simple can this be
no,
made?
no. Basically, the code needs to be written in this MCP framework they've got. So the example I chose was Python. I'm not 100% certain, but I'm pretty sure that they've probably by now released a JavaScript version of the framework. So you would need to write code in either um, Python or JavaScript
Okay.
to write the MCP server, the Model Context Protocol server.
Okay.
Uh, so now the Claude app isn't the only thing that could be a client to that server. You could also write servers in other languages, clients in other languages, but they've built the ability to function as a client into the Claude desktop app, just again because they're trying to encourage use of their tools.
Yeah, that's
So
cool.
yeah. So now the other thing I showed
Hmm.
was kind of going the other way, that this is using the Claude app to run things. The other demo I showed was, and I believe you've seen this one before when I showed it in Malmo, but is we're using FileMaker to control things. And in this case, Um, I don't think I'm sharing the audio output from this, but
Oh, that's okay.
I'll just
Talk it through.
yeah, I'll just talk it through. So basically what I've built is the
Tell me
ability.
which tools are
Oh, I do
available
hear
in
the
the
audio.
application.
Okay, great. I'm recording the audio directly into FileMaker. It's being transcribed by a local Whisper model on my computer. It's now talking to a large language model, and I'll just pause it there for a second. So the command I said, tell me which tools are available to me. And so the large language model running in Olama, the model is actually Llama 3.1.
Hmm.
It's basically taken the information I've sent and it's identified three potential tool calls that it can use. There's predicting sales, viewing historic sales, and then tool availability description, which is actually this script that is running right here. This alert is the tool
Oh,
availability
yeah.
description.
Meta.
So um, because obviously the LLM has no knowledge of what it can do in FileMaker unless I tell it.
Sure.
So I'll just play that on a bit further.
And I mean, presumably you could also have it,
Okay, I'm
make
interested
records and whatnot. So anyway,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um,
in historic sales for sweatshirts.
so interested in historic sales for sweatshirts.
yep.
Basically, after the LLM comes back and it's now run basically a sales report showing me the sales for sweatshirts.
Yeah, and a regular old FileMaker report.
Sales for
Cool.
green
Sorry, carry on.
And yeah, it's in a FileMaker found set.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
sweatshirts.
So I've asked for now for the green or red ones. I can't remember which color it was, but again, yeah. So that's shown the green sweatshirt sales.
Got it. Got it. Got it. So this is like
Now show me
interpreting a
green
command and
sales.
then sending, it must be sending some like what, JSON to a script in FileMaker that says, go look in this
Yeah,
table, go do this search, sort it by
absolutely.
this, blah, blah, blah. Okay, okay. So
Yeah.
you
So what
have to predefine
I'll
it. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I'll just there's one more little bit of the demo, then I'll show you what it's doing behind the scenes.
Hmm.
Okay, so
EO salary.
let's ask for the CEO salary now. Now, the thing is, it doesn't have a tool to tell me the CEO salary. Now, obviously, I've kind of made this kind of jokey error message, but
Yeah,
essentially, it can only do what we tell it can do and what the FileMaker scripting we're running will allow. So, in terms of how that actually works, if I find, um, just hang on a second. Things tucked away on different screens. So this is the talk I gave at Claris. And what I'll do is I won't go through the whole talk, but if I go to this one, for example, this kind of summarizes what we're doing. We've got the user speaking. Basically, we're doing the recording. So the first part is just the top part here is just dealing with the transcription. And then it returns a transcribed text back to FileMaker into a web viewer. So it's basically the transcription is it's recording the audio through a WebSocket to an
hmm
API that talks to Whisper. And it returns that value back to FileMaker, and FileMaker runs a script which sends a JSON request to the large language model, an Olama.
right. You could also just type a request in to get back that first part, but
Absolutely,
yeah,
but it's
yeah,
not as
yeah.
cool, is it?
That's definitely nowhere near as cool. Yeah.
So, so essentially, we're asking the LLM which tools can handle the user prompt. So we need to tell it which model we want to use, which tools are available, and what did the user ask for.
Hmm.
And so we need to tell it again which tools, but we also need to say what parameters of those parameters are which are mandatory. And I basically the tools in this case were just FileMaker scripts. So I've got one record per FileMaker script that I'm allowing the system to run. Sorry, there's a bit of a
Oh, I
siren going on
see.
in the
Yeah, so you
background, but
have
so
data, you have a table that has FileMaker scripts with parameters in it. Okay, cool.
exactly. And this is basically what we're sending, the information we're sending. So we've got the script. The description, the more descriptive this description is of what we actually want, the more accurate the LLM is going to be, because this is what it's relying on to decide what script to choose, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then the parameters, some of them can be mandatory or not. And then basically I'm bundling that up. So I've got a calc field to convert this to the correct JSON format. And so the prompt looks a bit like this. So telling it so we specify which model, and so it needs to be a model that supports tool calling. So Llama 3.1 does things like DeepSeek, for example, we could not use for this because it's a reasoning model. It's not designed to return simply just JSON. When we're doing this, we
Mhm.
want to get back just JSON. We don't want to get back like big chunks of text, of stream of thought consciousness, which
Yeah,
is what people
that totally
tends to
makes
do.
sense. Okay, okay. So are there, for example, or are there OpenAI models that I would maybe know that do that?
So I will,
Are there,
uh,
well, like OpenAI models, I mean, 4.0, I don't think can do that, right?
I believe it can, yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
If you specify, if you tell it format JSON, um, a, a huge
Oh,
amount
well,
of
of course
work.
it does. Like if you make an API call, it always comes back JSON.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, sorry.
Um,
But
yeah.
that's different than, okay, okay,
Yeah. But
continue.
it's really, really important, that aspect. And that's something that a lot of work went into over the last year with large language models, because people want to interact with them programmatically. And basically, if it gives you back like long chunks of text, you can't do that. So you used to have these, you'd see sample code that was interacting with LLMs that would basically say, give me the format in JSON. It would tell it this in several different ways, trying to force it into giving back JSON. And then it would receive the response. And then you'd have a whole bunch of code trying to parse out everything that was not JSON and get rid of it.
Oh
So
boy, yeah,
stripping out the text saying, yeah, why certainly I'd like to help you, that kind of thing. Um, so they're really good about it now, that some of the models have been designed to support tools, and so they're very good about returning just JSON.
cool. Oh,
We don't want to stream the response. We tell it what user prompt was, and then we've got like a system part of the prompt, which is got two parts. We've got sort of the tools that we're sending, the parameters, and this is the OpenAI example. You can see that we've got the
yep,
message saying, what's the weather in
yep, the
Paris?
role.
Then we've got the tools. What type is it? It's a function, the name, the description, then the parameters, all that kind of stuff. And so what we do is we basically build this up, except instead of giving it Python functions, we give it a FileMaker script. So then what we get back is we get the response to our request from the LLM into FileMaker, and the response looks like this. It says function name. This is one example with no parameters, but
Hmm.
for the other one, to view the historic sales one, it's told me the script name, view historic sales, and then I've got the parameters that I need to run that script. And then at that point, we use perform script by name
Yep.
to run that function. So it's it it's kind of like a conversation I had with Wim de Court probably a couple of weeks back, where basically it more or less was saying like, well, this is all API calls.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
FileMaker gives us all the tools to deal with API calls. Um, with insert from URL and the ability to create and parse JSON. So FileMaker gives us all the tools we need to do this kind of interaction, which is really cool. I should say at this point that in future versions of FileMaker, some of this stuff is going to become easier. That there are going
Yeah,
to
I
be
mean, yeah,
some more advanced tools to deal with this kind of thing.
yeah, they're clearly putting resources in. I'm kind of thinking about this because I've been playing with something that kind of does something a little bit like this. But it shows you the results of your query in of your prompt, I should say, in a web viewer. But in order
Yeah,
for that to work, you have to actually send it all of the FileMaker data. The thing that I love about this is you don't have to you're not sending any FileMaker data. you're just sending and making it construct a command or something, if you will.
Yeah,
And then it's just doing a regular old FileMaker search using regular old FileMaker
absolutely.
tools,
So what?
which actually could be, they don't have to be um,
Yeah,
regular file. You could do a semantic search, or it could run an
abs
a
anything. Yeah.
generative API call. Yeah, anything.
So
Okay.
what we're actually doing here is we're implementing one of the design patterns. So like Anthropic, the AI company, have got a really cool um, blog post on building AI agents, and they've ident they said that building full-on agents, like really try to avoid it. What you can do is you can build things that are a lot simpler that actually get the job done. And they've identified a number of design patterns, and this is one of them. So this is the routing pattern where you've got an input, your LLM call functions as a router, and then what it does is it decides which call goes next. And that's basically what we're doing here with FileMaker, except instead of saying in place of LLM call 1, 2, and 3, we've got FileMaker scripts.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, if you're doing this, it's best to keep things relatively focused on a certain area or domain of knowledge, because if you pass it a big chunk of 100 scripts or choices, it's probably going to get confused. Whereas if they're kind of related, what we could do is we could use the first LLM call to say narrow down to the area, let's say whether it was finance or marketing or whatever, and then ask a specific um, request related to that domain of knowledge. And then you can have a much more focused, detailed prompt that gives much more context about that knowledge domain, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Cool. Um,
So
let's see. What might I have missed in this? Do you have to send in the first call, at some call, do you have to actually send a list of all the FileMaker scripts that it can call and kind of what their AI is, or is that, or what their parameters are, or
yeah,
is that another, it
um,
comes at another stage?
no,
Stacking is a
that's
different,
kind of that's sort of early on. Just
okay.
sorry, I'm just trying to find
Yeah,
where
I think you did see it.
yeah.
Did
So
show
in
it.
here, it okay. So this is a curl call, but this is what we're really doing behind the scenes with insert from URL. So we build up this chunk of data here as our JSON that we're going to send.
Yeah,
And
tools
under
type
tools,
function.
we would just use this exact same format, but the function name would be the name of our script. The parameters would be the our script parameters that we got from
Got
here.
it. So in the
I mean,
tools would be an
it's an ugly
array.
example,
Yeah, so
but
the tools is
I
an
think
array of all the records in the table with the names of the script. Okay, okay.
that's correct.
Okay.
And like I was saying, that I think what we probably would want to do would be to try to make sure that it's fairly focused by business domain or area of knowledge, and then you'll get better results.
So the
Um,
user can improve the performance of this in a couple of different ways. They could go into this FileMaker folder of FileMaker table and
yeah,
change the description and like the description field. I think you said is really important.
yes, that
And
is.
put better parameters in for
Yeah.
that. They
So
could
we could,
add more tools, right? So that automatically
yeah.
then gets into the script to deal with it. And then
Hmm.
also choose a different model. So when a different model comes out, it'll do a better job understanding stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, that's something interesting I've been looking at. That because what you've got is you've got different models that you may want to use in different circumstances. So one of the things I'm looking at is basically having something that is like a first query that you would pass the query, and then it would basically give you the answer. Do I need to run this on a big model, or can I just run it on a small model? Because small models are cheap, big models can get expensive.
Yep.
And you don't want to run everything. You don't want to send everything to OpenAI's most expensive model.
Yeah.
If you can get away
O3
to run
large
it
or
on a
whatever. Yeah.
cheap, some tiny cheap model. So if you're generating SQL code, for example, there's a lot of smaller models that are actually now really good at generating SQL code. So you probably wouldn't want to send that to OpenAI's most expensive model
Right.
or Anthropic's most expensive model. You want to do that as cheaply as possible.
Ronnie showed a demo that actually that's what it did. So in your case, you're actually having the code run FileMaker scripts to do presumably, one of the things I like to call the magic quartet. Go to layout, enter find mode, set field, perform find to get the found
Yeah,
set back. But
yeah.
it could also do a SQL call and get keys, and then use other methods in FileMaker to show the data. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
So
I
I'll just,
love the I love what this leverages in FileMaker, right? It's just kind of like there's so many different options of how to do that.
the thing
So
is that some of the basic stuff in FileMaker we take for granted actually is just like what you've described there, the just performing a find is so powerful.
I know.
And what we can do is we can now use LLMs to decide which things should we be doing. So yeah, I'm just really excited by what we are going to be able to do with all this stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and requests or requests, emit. After you do the find, sculpt it in some way, loop through records, go do a find and go to a related for the entire set, outer join, whatever. All that stuff is just so easy to code in a FileMaker script. Um,
Yeah.
so what are some of the real world use cases you think that flow, or do you have anything in production for clients that use something like that?
You think that? No, no, I don't. That, to be honest, is
It looks
that's kind of
looks
still
kind of
at the
cutting edge.
experimental stage.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Um, if one of your listeners has something that they would like to do, give me a yell, and I would love to help them, put that into production. But I think there's going to be the closest thing I've got is, and this is something that's basically being tested at the moment, is it is a reporting system where somebody can just enter um, plain text queries, and it will actually, in this case, it does use SQL to
Oh,
query the
okay.
system. So, but the other thing it does is when it generates those queries and it gives back the results, it passes it off to an LLM, and so they get the results back in plain text if they want.
Okay.
But the other thing we could do here is have different tools. So we could give a tool that would return it in plain text. We could have one that would give them back a chart, an Excel
JavaScript,
file,
yeah, JavaScript,
JavaScript.
HTML,
All these
sure.
different formats could all be implemented as simple tools, and so it'd be very extensible. But the other thing we've done there is that what it allows them to do is to say, this query actually gave me really good results. And so they can just tag that, and then that can be kind of almost favorited.
Yep,
So
yep, yep. That
then
makes
in that
sense.
case,
Like
it
the
doesn't
like
need to
button.
go to the LLM anymore to query because we know we've got like a SQL query that gave somebody really meaningful, useful results, and they can just run that query directly. So that kind of cuts out the LLM. But
Yeah, I like that.
in
I
terms
mean,
of
because
exploration to find new, so when someone's exploring data, this gives them another tool that they can, because a lot of people who are, if you've got a company manager who wants to explore the data of their results, they don't want to learn how, they don't want to learn Python or R or
right.
do a whole lot of scripting. They just want to sit there and look at the data and ask questions of it. And
Yeah,
this
that's
can
true.
give them that capability.
Well, I mean, if they did learn something like R, really hard, um, they'd still have to know kind of exactly what they want, and it's not, you don't get all that stuff for free. You have to do a lot of stuff in advance. You could also just use
Absolutely.
FileMaker for that, right? Like, here's my big, leaf node table with all the line items in it.
Yeah, yeah.
Do a query, slice and dice, sort by this, go to show related, whatever, things
Mhm.
like that, which you can get a lot of information. But this is so much more natural and so much faster that it really gives you a field of a capability you've never really had in FileMaker, which is this, interaction or conversation with your data.
Yeah, because LLMs they're they're stunningly good at generating SQL. They're also really good at generating Python code. So you can some of these things behind the scenes of a query like that, a lot of stuff can be going on to query the data. And if you pass the data structure to the LLM, frankly, the LLM is going to be able to understand the behind the scenes data structure much more than um, because if you think about it, as database developers, we need to understand the business problem. Uh,
Yeah.
we understand the business problem, but we also have to translate that into behind the scenes, generally relational databases. And if you think about it, a lot of relational database structure, much of the structure is there to support the needs of the database rather than the needs of the user.
Yeah.
Um, a senior manager at a company who wants to know about the green sweatshirt sales last month doesn't want to learn, doesn't care about normalization or shouldn't need to know about it.
Right.
The
It'd be
LLM can
easier
just
if it was a
say,
huge flat thing, right? For them, for their
well,
perspective.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and the LLMs can take away a lot of that kind of hassle of the query
Yeah.
that they can they can make just and the other thing is that someone can sit there and they can just try it and try it and try a whole load
Yeah.
of variant. And it takes away the loop of them having to talk to a developer who sometimes, for all the best will in the world, sometimes we can be a bit stroppy and difficult to deal with. And
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
get a really quick
So
turnaround on
it's
looking at the data.
right. So it's not, so this is not a workflow, not a, what am I trying to say? A job that a FileMaker user is really ever used to doing. In FileMaker, you don't experiment, search, 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 and try to get results you want. You kind of know what you want, you're going to get it, and you don't keep trying. But Google, for example, like if you
Yeah.
search for results, you don't find it, you try to keep editing your query. So people are sort of trained by
Yeah.
having to outthink a little bit, like the prompt to get the results you want. And I think that's good. I think that's a skill. I think that's a skill that our users have. They just have never been
Mhm.
able to use it in FileMaker before.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Maybe like
Yeah.
searching for something like a name, you got to try to spell it different ways. Enter semantic search, you know.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, actually, one of the examples that I've got in my slide deck for Engage is around semantic search and the contextual search. And I basically went to Netflix and I typed into Netflix, I'm looking for a film with a strong female lead. And,
Yeah,
I'm expecting I'm going to get back, aliens, stuff like this.
sure.
What I get back from Netflix is just basically a database message saying like there's no indexed fields of that have,
Yeah, it doesn't have the meaning.
and yeah, to me, it just seems like that's such an obvious kind of use case where
Yeah,
you can make search better and more meaningful. Because as a user, I wouldn't need to worry about what's indexed or
true.
what.
In the examples that I've been doing, semantic search is not supposed to really work very well on names because they don't really have meaning, people's names.
Yeah,
But and then if you just use a model like text 3 small, I think it's the name, and you index and you embed nothing except the name of the person, you could search for something like Swedish names. That's the prompt you can put in, not a person's name, and it will kind of
yeah,
give you names that are Swedish that are common. Or if you type in a name that is Swedish, like Bjorn or something like that. Bjornson. We were just looking at him before that call. Um, then it will show you names of that variant, but it will also show you other names that are not close to that, but are Swedish. And it works for any other language as well. Any ones that are supported, right?
amazing,
That
isn't it?
particular model is multilingual, but it doesn't do everything.
Hmm.
So like the example that I did is I translated my name to a bunch of different languages. And then if you search for it, spelled correctly or not, it comes up. And you could search for it in any language and you get results in any language. It's magic uh,
Yeah, it really
in
is.
any kind of a multilingual environment. And even not in multilingual because it still corrects spelling and it does a ton of other things. The results aren't in the order that you predict, but you get the result you want in the top 10 or 20.
Yeah, the ordering of the results is, yeah, in that case, I guess it's going to be interesting because FileMaker tries to sort by semantic similarity. And yeah, in that
Yeah.
case where there's not a lot of context, I'm not sure how that really works.
Well, FileMaker is not calculating the semantic similarity. The model is kind of doing that, but it either is or is not, a match. The model basically is what the limitation is there, I think. Um,
Yeah. That actually raises sort of an interesting point because I was there's a user group online where somebody had been having some issues with semantic search and it wasn't quite working the way they were expecting. And um, what I found interesting was when I looked into it a bit deeper was the differences in the results that you would get from different models. Different models will give you different
sure.
results. Um, and actually, that's a place where you can also fine tune embedding models to give you That's not something people talk about a lot because
Yeah,
an
there is
embedding
that
model
feature
will,
when you embed. I don't know how to use it, but I know there's a feature in there. I haven't played with it yet, I should say. When you do the embedding, there's that one extra area where you can put configuration.
yeah, this is actually changing the model itself. So
Oh, okay.
if you've got a very narrow area of domain knowledge, you can fine tune an embedding model to this is not a this is not a trivial undertaking. It's a fairly major
Mm-hmm.
undertaking, but it is possible that let's say you were working in finance, that you might actually then get a fine-tuned finance embedding model that's going to be give you better search results and similarity results for finance. So if you think let's take for example again with finance that if you've got with finance they might be dealing with securities in the sense of what stocks and bonds, but they may also have security like computer security, and the word security has got like two totally different contexts, and a standard semantic search on the word security is going to give you quite unpredictable results in terms of which of those contexts it's going to give you because it just doesn't know. So
Right.
that's that's a case where, and that's why some people, when they've got very short sentences, find that this stuff seems to give almost random results. Whereas if you give it much longer sentences, then you've got more context for it to know what to search for.
Have you used I should ask a couple more nerd questions in here. You do something like JSON LD or another mechanism like that to put in metadata with the data that you're embedding? So, in other words, rather than just a name, you're embedding a JSON blob that says this is name data. The language for this particular name is this. The um, the context of the name is this, the type of company they work for is that, whatever. Um, and you're putting more than just the name in there. And then when you do your prompt, you're embedding your prompt in the same way. And
Right.
then so then it's actually doing, the embedding, it has a lot more information than just John Smith to John Smith.
Yeah, I haven't done that with FileMaker, but the system that I was using before FileMaker had it is something called Pinecone.
Oh yeah,
Pinecone
yeah, yeah.
is basically it's a vector database in the cloud, and that's what I
Right.
was using
Okay.
for embedding before FileMaker had it.
Yeah. I
And
actually have done that with FileMaker and the results are way better. Yeah, it's night
okay,
and day better.
that's
And then
yeah,
you can also get much more information too. You get like if
there we
you're
go.
looking
See, that's
for if you're looking for like a product description or something like that. Well, maybe that's I'm trying to think of an example. Um, like a good example would be like an invoice with its line items. And a lot of times people want to say like, I want to try to, rather than creating a whole invoice with all of its stuff, I want to find
mhm.
some customer who has bought this configuration before, and I want to find the one that's the closest to this one. And I have no idea how far in the past it is, which then I can start from as a duplicate. I've had this particular question a bunch of times. And so you can embed a JSON that says, this is a mechanical engineering project. These are the line items. This is the total price. Um, and then
Yeah.
whatever
So
other data you have, even text data.
so essentially what you're doing is you're kind of converting that um, tabular data into textual something that the
Yeah.
model can work with
Into
more
JSON
effectively.
with
Yeah.
really explicit tags. So
Right.
the tags, they really give you a lot of information. Um,
Hmm.
this is stuff I'll be teaching in my classes coming up uh, on AI integration. I love that all of us who are doing this have such a different approach. You're miles ahead of me. You've tried some things that I haven't even done, but I love doing my own experiments and learning. So
Well, actually, to be honest, I'm just what you're just describing there. I think like, that's what I can try that out this afternoon in
yeah,
FileMaker.
it
That's
works really well. And there's a thing called JSON LD, which you take a look at it. It's a specific format of it, and then it uses a schema that you send.
yeah.
Um,
Okay.
uh,
Yeah. So I mean, JSON-L is yeah, is a format that's used in terms of training data for models, and that's a whole different
oh,
topic. But
yeah, maybe that's the same kind
yeah,
of a thing. Yeah, maybe it's the same thing, right? Where you're
yeah. Well, it's essentially like a line of JSON by itself. Um, so if you've got a JSON-L file, It's just like a whole load of lines of JSON, different JSON documents rather than
Okay.
one.
So that's not what I was thinking then. Yeah.
But no,
So
but this it sounds like a variant of what you've described. Sounds like a variant of it.
I think so. Yeah. It uses like schema.org and you're putting a specific, it actually has a reference to like a standard description for different types of things. And
Okay,
then
cool.
because JSON has name value pairs,
Yeah,
you have company name. Your name for that thing could be something in your industry, like mechanical engineering vendor name is this,
yeah.
you know.
This
Um,
what you said there that with schema.org, that kind of goes back to like with the tool calling and the structured data because you need to get the results back in a highly structured JSON format. That JSON format can't vary from time to time. It
right.
that needs to be the same every time, 100% of the time, so you can rely on it to parse it correctly.
Yeah. Or every time you change it, you have to re-embed the data. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
A couple nerd questions. I still don't know the answer of whether there's a performance difference if you store the embedding container in an external container or it has to be locally in the file. Do you know?
Yeah, there is a performance difference. Because I actually chatted early on when they were building this. I was lucky enough to sort of get early access to it, and
Mhm.
I actually asked that very question to one of the developers, and they said, yes, it is slower, that there is a performance penalty, but it's not very
If it's
much.
externally stored. Oh, not very much. Okay.
Yeah,
So it's not
yeah,
like a
yeah.
five times performance difference or something.
No, it's like 5% or
Oh,
something.
okay, great.
I've got notes somewhere, but it's on that order of magnitude. And because the that brings up that also ties into another really, really important point in that database backups, that if you've got these vector embeddings can be very large.
Yeah,
And if you put them internally within your main database, you're now creating a bit of
big.
a backup issue. And
Yeah,
how do you manage that? So having them externally allows you to, it gives you more flexibility in determining your backups
yeah,
strategy to avoid backing up
hugely.
because
Yeah.
yeah. Now, oh, what they did say was that where there is a performance impact, a bigger performance impact is if you encrypt those, if those are in
Oh,
secure
that would make a
storage
big difference. Yeah,
externally,
yeah,
then they've got to deal with
yeah.
that horrendous,
Decrypting. Yeah.
yeah, all that. Apparently, there's more of a performance impact there. So, to be honest,
Second
it's
nerd.
something that you probably actually do a bunch of tests on to try to get some like hard numbers because I
Okay,
think that would be
another nerd
interesting.
question. I think we're getting close to wrapping here. Okay. Sometimes when I do a search, like I like to play with thousands of records. Sometimes
Yeah.
I'll do like three or four in a row and they're instantaneous. Boom, boom, boom. Or not
Hmm.
instantaneous, but like a second. And then I'll do one and it will be like, oh, searching on, 10,000 records and it will take a minute or a couple of minutes. And I don't know why that is or how to control it.
If you're searching, what I found was that from on the I've not tested this for a long time, but I did do some testing on this really early on. That if you searched directly on the context of what you're searching for, things seem to be fast. If you searched through a relationship, it looked like things needed to get dragged down from the server like every time.
Yeah, no, this is still in a local table. So this is like a
Okay,
flat
still
table.
local.
Yeah, a flat
Right.
table, and sometimes it's fast and sometimes it's not. And this particular example, the server's really small, but when I look at the
Yeah.
server stats, it doesn't seem like the server's doing any other work. I'm not sure where the work is being done, honestly. Do you know?
Yeah, it could, I mean, to be honest, it might be something like the database cache, the local database cache on your computer
Hmm.
decided that, oh, I'm too different, and now I need to just go and download everything locally again.
Right. Okay,
Maybe
yeah, that would make
uh,
sense. Because it's actually
because I think,
caching all the container data, yeah?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So when you're searching on all these things,
Oh,
and I
that's
mean,
huge if that's the case.
yeah, and what
I
you
mean,
do want to do is you do want to, if you can, kind of pre-filter your searches. So if you're able to do index field searches to reduce the number of records
yeah.
that you're doing a semantic search on,
Mhm.
things will definitely be quicker.
Yeah, I've definitely heard that. Sometimes, of course, you can't do that. Like if you have a big name database, and you
Yeah.
have 20,000 names, you can't really do a, you know, I mean, there may be
Yeah.
ways to do it. You can say only look at the ones that have actually done business with us in the last year,
Yeah.
or something like that.
I've I've got some charts on the performance, and it's actually the performance kind of scales linearly with the number of records. Obviously,
Yeah, for the
lo-
search.
lo-
Yeah, the
for
embedding is
search,
different. Yeah.
until you reach a point, a certain point, and then there's like a huge drop off. But that point I found was, I mean, I was testing this on a very small, like a Mac Mini 16 gigabyte server, and that point I think was around about three-quarters of a million records.
Oh, okay, that's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but even by the time you reach there, I mean, you're now looking at a couple of, several minutes for the search. But what happened was at three-quarters of a million, it kind of went from just picking the numbers at random here, but
Hmm.
it sort of seemed to go from say 3 minutes to 6 minutes, like it
Right.
was a giant, and then it went
Yeah.
back to kind of linear again. So my suspicion was it was something server related. The server was just running out of memory or something like
Yeah.
that.
I can't imagine that it has to cache all the containers because I mean a container like for a text embedding for text-free small, it's 12K. Every
Yeah.
embedding file is 12K. And if you have, 10,000 records, that's a lot. That's a couple hundred
Yeah.
megs. And it's not going to download a couple hundred megs to your cache upon opening the file because you would notice that. And
Hmm.
when you do the very first search, it doesn't take any time because you would notice that. So there must be something else going on. I should have asked Ronnie.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I'm not sure.
If anybody else knows the answer, definitely,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, tell me. What
Yeah.
else you got?
What else have I got? So what have we talked about? Talked about. We talked a little about local LLMs, didn't we? But not
A little, but not that much.
not that much.
Yeah.
So yeah, when I was after I did my talk at Claris, I was talking to a
Hmm.
number of other developers, and one of the things that people were a bit concerned by was the need to send all the data to OpenAI or Anthropic or whichever cloud provider. Um,
Hmm.
and I use a product called Olama. It's olama.com, I think,
Oh,
and it provides
LLMA.
like a downloadable installer that will allow you to run a large language model on your local computer. Obviously, it's going to run much better on a computer with a GPU, so
Yeah.
like an M series Mac, where it'll take advantage of that. But you, it's very easy to install,
Hmm.
administer, and lets you run local models. It provides APIs as well, so you could use it for if you're doing a vector embedding with FileMaker, you can use Olama to serve the vector embedding. You'd need to choose a model that's supported, but there's a number of them that will work with that, and the different LLMs, and it's quite good. The amount of memory you've got in your computer obviously is a huge determinant of what kind of model you can use, but
Right.
most of the models, like an 8 billion parameter model, you'd be able to run on a regular desktop computer with no
Yeah.
problems.
16 gigs of
You,
RAM kind of thing.
yeah, exactly. I
Yeah.
mean, on that, you would not be able to run a 70B model, which has got 70 billion parameters, because
Right.
that would require, you might even struggle to run that in 64 gigabytes of RAM.
Yeah.
Um, so they're not as powerful as the models from OpenAI or Anthropic.
Sure.
However, they can, for a lot of purposes, they're more than good enough. And that example of the tool calling I gave was all running locally. It did not talk to a cloud service at all. Um, so so I'm
Yeah.
I'm
And
really
since the actual find doesn't have to uh, make an API call unless you embed your find, which then allows you to do a vector search rather than a natural language search. Um,
yeah.
yeah. So that's I guess one other problem to solve, right? Embedding is well, I guess you
Yeah.
also really kind of embed as you go. Like every time a record is updated, there needs to be some sort of a way to re-embed it, right? Like in my name example, you change the spelling of
Hmm.
a name or add a new record. You're not going to use embed found set. You're going to embed that one record server
Yeah, just
side
the
or
one
whatever.
record. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you do them kind of one at a time, there's not a massive load.
No, it's
If you do
fast.
need if you do need to do a large number of them, using the insert embedding and found set, can do it more quickly, but it also gives you several parameters that you can adjust. And some of those parameters can make things faster by changing the number of records you send at once. Claris has gone for, I think, what's a fairly conservative number, and I found that I could make the embeddings run sort of more than twice as fast by adjusting those parameters.
Oh, so it's that
But
parameter section on the embedding and found set. That's the one area in the semantic world that
yeah,
you can actually specify the things
yeah,
in the script step itself that actually configures how things. Okay, cool, cool. I didn't know. I haven't
correct.
played with that yet either, so I'll play with that too.
Yeah, um, I've got some slides somewhere on
Okay.
that. I'll send them to you
Okay,
so you
great.
can
Is that
see
actually,
what.
do you happen to know if it's documented in the Claris help files too?
Yeah,
Okay, good. That's an easy way to do
yeah,
it.
it is.
Okay.
I did some experimenting and sort of playing around with different values. So I got some kind of stats on that as well, sort of the changes in performance you might see
Yeah,
from playing with them. Um, and yeah, so
cool.
yeah, that occupied a surprising amount of time.
I know this whole thing, it's experimenting and learning, and I guess I'll leave you with kind of my one opinion on this. Um, I think us FileMaker developers, we FileMaker developers, have a really important task on us right now, and that is to use our imagination and really think about what our clients um, could use in AI. We're not waiting for them to tell us. We're using our experience and history of knowing what their job is, what they do, what they need, that they don't
Mhm.
know that they need, because we've been doing that all along. Um,
Yeah.
we watch over their shoulder and we watch them, you know, print a file or do some really workaround thing for PDF and then emailing it. And we go, there's one script step. Um, yeah, so things like that, I think. But I think for the AI world, it's a much bigger task that we have. Um, but I think a really important one. So I think we
Yeah.
really all need to build our skills on what the capabilities are, what really good use cases have been laid down, and we can repeat them and make a case to put these things into our customer systems. We're not just putting stuff in willy-nilly because I think that's a recipe for failure. But I think
Agreed. Yeah.
searching for really useful use cases, from obvious ones like generative model to translate something from one language to another, to
Hmm.
more subtle ones that like what you were showing that have a stack of things, right? Like
Yeah.
it does a generative, which does a semantic search, which goes out to something, which then calls a script, which does a that's a stack of things that can solve a really significant problem that the customer does not know they have, or create a solution that they could really benefit from that they don't know that they need,
Yeah.
you know?
I mean, one example of that sort of stack would be let's say that you've got a web form where you get new contacts coming in. You can basically receive the web form, the contact information from the client.
Yeah.
In the background, the system basically can basically then go off. It could actually do a bit of research on the company,
Mm-hmm.
find information and come back.
That's so
And
true.
based
Yeah.
on that, basically say, well, this guy's asking you to rebuild Facebook, but the company's two people in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
Alternatively, it's like this is multinational who's got a significant and those kinds of
Right.
things you want to respond in different ways. And
Yeah. Oh, that's an
not the
interesting
whole
one.
thing, but some of these things can be automated to
Yeah, that's a
help
solid
provide.
use case. And I hadn't thought about that, but you can do an API call and send data and say, go out on the internet and search this information.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, cool. All right. Well, there's a ton more to talk about, and I'll have you
Sure.
on again,
Okay.
and
That'd
we'll
be
keep
great.
nerding out about it. Yeah. Thanks
Okay.
so much for your time. This has been great.
Yeah, it has. Just I'm going to say one last thing.
Yes, yes,
If
yes.
anybody else is going to be in Austin, Texas for Engage, it'd be great to chat about this stuff. So
Are you going to be
hope to
going
see
to
you
other
there.
European conferences too, like the one in Spain, uh,
Uh, I'm not
coming
sure
up in
yet.
April?
Actually, they just announced Engage EU is going to be in Antwerp this year
Yes,
in
November.
November, which I'm looking forward to. Definitely
Yep.
be there. Uh,
That's the one. If you're going to go to one in Europe, that's the one to go to, I think. Um,
yeah, I would
Yeah,
agree.
there's other ones that are great as well. Rome FileMaker Week, which will not be in Rome this year because there's a huge festival going on there
Yes, because Rome's
this year.
full.
Uh, and uh,
There is the one in
Vienna.
Austria, in
Vienna.
Vienna is kind of the same week as the .fmp used to be.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Is that in June, I think? I can't remember.
That's the first week of June.
There you
Yeah.
go. Yeah. Okay.
There's a
Awesome.
number of, anyway,
Yep.
great.
Thanks so much for your time.
Okay, you're very welcome. Been great. Thank you.